When I was 12, my mom finally started to trust me enough to leave me home alone, so it happened. Around that age, we lived in a quiet, safe little town with quiet streets, big yards, friendly neighbors, and a village full of little shops and restaurants. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd feel unsafe walking around alone at night. So my parents were fine with leaving me alone for a few hours. At the time, we still lived in the same house we do now. It was the weekend, and my parents had decided to go out and leave me home that night. When I was younger, my grandparents would babysit me and my older sister, but she wasn't home. And since I was old enough, they decided to trust me. My parents were young and always lied, and they loved going out or traveling with friends on weekends. They left me some money so I could order pizza. For a 12 or 13-year-old, it was the perfect night. My own house, unlimited video games, and pizza. I was addicted to James Bond games, and that night I was playing Nightfire for the third time on my PS2. When I finished the game again, I decided to order a pizza. There was a pizzeria nearby, Johnny's, where we used to order from all the time, although it's closed now. I ordered a medium pizza, and when I was 12, I could easily eat 3 slices. My mom always told me to wrap the leftovers in aluminum foil and put them in the fridge. While I waited, I put another game on my console. When the doorbell rang, I ran downstairs with the $20 my parents had left. My mom had told me to tip 4, which was fair, since the pizzeria was 3 blocks away. The delivery guy looked to be in his 30s, wore glasses, a black trucker cap, and a long, unkempt beard, the kind of guy who makes you uncomfortable. I handed over the $20 and asked for exact change. As he handed me the pizza and counted out my change, he looked at me, then looked inside the house and asked, "Are you alone here?" I knew it was a strange, kind of scary question. And since my parents always warned me about strangers, I told him that my parents were coming home. A bad answer, I know, but it was what came to mind at the time. It was obvious why he asked. There was no car in the garage, and it was a child who opened the door. After he handed my change, I closed the door. I ate in the kitchen, devoured 3 slices, put the rest in the fridge, and went back to my room to play Agent Under Fire, another 007 game which I liked a little less, but still enjoyed. I played for hours, until around 11 p.m. The doorbell rang again. I thought it was my parents and ran to the door saying, "Mom, Dad," but instead, an unfamiliar voice answered, "Hey, I need help." He said he needed to use the phone. I asked, "Who is it?" And he repeated that he just needed a phone. I didn't want to look out the window because honestly I was scared. I went straight upstairs. I knew that opening the door would be a terrible idea. As I was going upstairs, I heard the man knock on the door and say, "Please wait, I need help." That meant he saw me. He was looking through the small glass window at the top of the door. I turned around, and even though the balcony was dark, I could see the outline of his head. I couldn't see his eye, but it was clear that he was staring at me. I ran to my parents' room and went straight to the phone. There was only one landline upstairs, and I only knew my mother's number, so I called her. She answered. I could tell she had had a few glasses of wine, but her voice changed completely when I told her that there was a man at the door wanting to get in. She became much more alert, asked if I had spoken to the man and if he knew I was alone. I told her the truth, and she became even more worried and asked if any knew I was alone. The only person who could have known was the pizza delivery guy. Meanwhile, the doorbell twice more. I spoke to my mother, desperate, saying that the guy wasn't going to leave. She told me to stay locked in their room and said she was going to call the police. She asked me not to hang up and stayed on the line with me. She and my father left the restaurant where they were so they could talk better. Since it was summer, the windows were open, and through one of them, I heard the gate opening. I could clearly hear the soft sound of the gate going to the backyard. I told my mother this, and she told me to stay quiet and keep the lights off. I asked quietly, "What if he tries to come in through the living room window?" My mother just told me to stay quiet and wait for the police. She kept updating me on when the police car would arrive. I started to calm down until I heard footsteps downstairs. Someone was inside the house. I said this in a whisper and heard my mother yell on the other phone, probably to the police. He broke into the house. She told me to hide under the bed. That was, for me, the scariest moment of my life. The only thing that gave me a minimal sense of security was the simple lock on the bedroom door. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, which were in front of my sister's room and mine. My parents' room was further back. The footsteps disappeared for a while. I think the intruder had gone into the other rooms. My mother said that the police were going to break down the door and that I should not leave under any circumstance. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway getting closer. The man tried to turn the doorknob to the room, but it was locked. He tried a few more times, not lightly, but didn't say anything. Then the footsteps moved away and went downstairs. I did everything I could not to cry. I remained completely silent, without saying a word on the phone. My mother told me that the police had arrived, but that I should stay where I was. I thought they were going to break down the door, but suddenly I heard heavy footsteps and someone yelling my name, saying they were the police. They came upstairs and my mom let me unlock the door. There were 2 officers upstairs and 2 downstairs. They didn't have to force their way in because the back door was ajar and the sliding window in the back was wide open. That's how the intruder got in. I told the officers everything, including my suspicions about the pizza delivery guy, with my parents listening in on the phone. When my parents got home, only 2 officers were still there. They listed the name of the pizza place in the police report. The next day, my parents took me to Gianni's to see if I recognized the delivery guy. I didn't see him there, so they asked the manager who matched the description. He said it must have been Phil who was making deliveries. When they explained what had happened, the manager said it didn't match Phil and told us to leave. My parents were furious, promised never to buy from there again, and made a scene at the pizzeria. We waited in the car for almost an hour, but Phil never showed up. My parents thought the manager had tipped him off, and that was why he disappeared. They consulted several lawyers, but no one wanted to take the case due to lack of evidence, saying it would be a waste of time. In the end, we never went back there, and it took a long time for my parents to feel safe enough to leave me alone again. To this day, I believe it was the delivery man or someone connected to him, because no one else knew I was alone that night. The description was exactly right. The police were called, but they found nothing. No signs of a break-in, no footprints, just the freezing pitch black of the forest. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. That night, as I was trying to sleep, I started hearing a faint tapping sound coming from downstairs. My bedroom was above the movie theater. It sounded like metal touching glass. I tried to convince myself it was normal. The sound went on for hours, and it came back night after night for weeks. Sometimes it would stop, sometimes I would wake up at 3 a.m. to the faint sound. One time, I swore I heard footsteps on the roof. I checked the windows, but never saw anyone. Still, I felt like I was being followed, watched. When winter came, my parents had to go away, and worried about everything that had happened, they left me a shotgun. We also had a huge Rottweiler, the sweetest dog you could imagine, but complete silent unless something serious was going on. One night I was alone. I heard slow footsteps in the snow. The dog stood up, ears pricked, and began to growl softly. A moment later, he burst into a ferocious bark at the front door. He only did that when he really saw something. I didn't move, not wanting whoever was outside to know I was alone. I stayed silent. Then came the knocking, slow, hollow, provocative. I didn't answer. I slept with the shotgun at my side, the door locked, the curtains drawn, the dog at my feet. The next day, when I went outside, I saw human footprints all around the house. They stopped at every window, as if the person were looking for me. I followed the track into the woods. After a half-mile, they began to zigzag, changed direction, turned back, as if he knew I was following him. Something told me to go back. That night, the sound came again, louder. I knew it was him. I grabbed the shotgun, unlocked the door, and went to the second-floor balcony. I turned on the backyard floodlights, and there he was, the same man, the same smile, the same dead eyes, with a knife in his hand. He was staring at me as if he could see right into my soul. I pointed the shotgun and yelled, "If you don't get out of here, I'll shoot you." He didn't react. He didn't blink. He just smiled. I fired into the air. Then he took a step back and started walking away slowly, still staring at me. That's when I let the dog go. I ran downstairs, opened the door and let him out. He took off into the Woods like a black missile, barking and growling. I'd never seen him so aggressive. He was wearing a shock collar, so he couldn't get very far, but I like to believe he scared the guy away for good. After that night, I never saw the man again. That was in March 2022, during spring break. I was a sophomore in college. My friends and I, 6 of us in total, decided to rent a cabin in South Carolina. We wanted to get away from the world for a few days. No school, no stress, no cell phones, just loud music, drinks, and good memories. There were 4 of us. Me, Matt, Chris, and Tyler, and 2 girls, Jess and Sarah. We'd all been friends since freshman year. The cabin was huge, cheap, 2-story, with a wraparound porch and 2 bathrooms, and it was isolated near a lake in the middle of nowhere. The owner had a thick accent and said something strange on the phone. Just don't get lost in the woods. There's old stuff there, broken wells, fallen fences, snakes. It's easy to get confused. We thought it was funny. It sounded like Southern charm. But when we arrived, we laughed. The drive was long. The GPS stopped working an hour before. The road turned to dirt and rock, narrow and surrounded by dense trees. The cabin didn't look like the pictures. It was old, dirty, with dusty windows and hanging shutters. It smelled strange, somewhere between wet wood and garbage. We joked about it, saying it gave the place character. We chose our rooms and started drinking at 7 o'clock. The first night was fun. Barbecue, loud music, card game. But at 11 o'clock it started to get cold and we went inside. I noticed how dark the forest was. Not just dark, completely opaque. The porch lights barely illuminated 3 feet. The branches seemed to close in around us. No wind, no insects. Heavy silence. We fell asleep around 2. In the morning, I stayed in a small room next to the kitchen with a window facing the forest. At 4:15, I woke up suddenly. My heart was racing. I heard lose. I thought it was the heater, but it kept repeating, rhythmically like fingers. I looked out the window, a man pressed against the glass, pale skin, disheveled hair, no shirt, just standing there, mouth half open, breathing. Eyes wide, not blinking, not moving, slowly tapping his fingers as if he were taunting me. I froze. The sound grew faster. I whispered to Matt, then louder. He woke up, saw the man and jumped off the couch, knocking over the table. That seemed to scare the intruder, who was gone before we could turn on the light and run outside. The girls were panicking. Tyler said it was some drunk guy. Chris said it might be a hunter, but I knew it was the same guy. Blocked the doors, pushed the couch up against the living room window and took turns keeping watch. In the morning, when we came out, we saw footprints, barefoot ones, all around the cabin. They stopped at every window, even in the upstairs bathroom. We should have left, but we didn't. We insisted. The second night, everything was the same. Drinks, music, bonfire. But the mood changed. Everyone was looking at the trees. Jess didn't drink. Chris had a knife stuck in his belt. We locked up before going to sleep at 3:30. Matt went to get some water. He stopped in the hallway and called out to me. There was someone in the kitchen, the same man, but this time he was inside, naked on his back, all scratches on his, like open wounds, standing in front of the refrigerator as if he didn't know what it was. It was rocking slowly. Matt backed away. We all gathered in the hallway, silent. Me with a pocket knife, Sarah with a poke, Chris with a piece of a chair. We turned on the light. He was gone. The back door was open. No sign of a break-in, just open. 20 minutes later, we left. No one argued. We took only the cell phone, wallet, keys. We drove until we got a signal and called the sheriff. We found the deputy at a roadside diner. He didn't seem surprised. He asked if anyone had been hurt. He just said, there are some guys living in these woods, not always right in their head. We tried to explain that he wasn't just a homeless man. This man had been watching us. He'd come back 2 nights in a row. He had a key or some way to get in. The deputy just nodded if he'd heard it before. When we mentioned the owner, he gave us a familiar look. The ad disappeared from the websites a few days later. Gone completely. We never got an explanation or a refund. But that face, his eyes in the window, I still see them sometimes when I wake up. We never talked much about that trip again. And as far as I know, neither of us has been back to South Carolina.